The pastor's voice echoed through the sanctuary. "We shouldn't put our brokenness on display." As every eye turned toward the scarred woman in the front row, her metals glinted, her hands didn't move, the room fell silent. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The sanctuary had once been her mother's favorite place, where light filtered through stained glass and hymns drifted up like smoke. But for Evelyn Carter, it felt more like a trial chamber. The walls of Calvary Chapel bore crosses and scripture, yet today, they felt carved from ice. She had rolled through those doors with a hesitant kind of dignity, shoulders squared, jaw set, her old army jacket pressed and zipped to the collar. A soft ribbon of her niece's laughter had floated toward her from the baptismal font. That had been enough. For a moment. But then she felt the shift in the air. The way people stopped mid-greeting, the half-smiles that faltered, how children were subtly guided aside by cautious hands. She'd grown used to stares, years of them, but this was different. It was not fear of her. It was discomfort with her being there at all. The scent of lavender polish on the wooden pews mingled with something sour, unease. Evelyn parked her chair halfway down the right aisle, between a teenage couple tapping on their phones and an elderly woman who didn't look up once. Pastor Garrison's voice had been warm at first, welcoming, if distant. But then he saw her. His breath hitched, just slightly, but Evelyn caught it, saw his jaw tighten. Then the words came, carefully wrapped in scripture but sharp enough to slice. "We must remember," he intoned, voice rising, "that inner healing often starts with not putting our brokenness on display." It landed like a blow. Her spine stiffened, not from pride, but restraint. Every nerve in her scarred face burned under fluorescent light. He never looked at her, but he didn't have to. He let the words hang in the air like a verdict. Murmurs rippled down the rows. Quiet coughs, the rustle of programs, a stifled laugh 2 pews back. The couple beside her subtly inched away. Evelyn didn't move. She couldn't. Something inside her locked up. She stared straight ahead, her breathing slow and deliberate, as if she were back in combat training, waiting for the next strike. It wasn't the insult that stunned her. It was the silence that followed. No gasps, no rebukes. Just the sound of 1,000 quiet agreements. And Evelyn understood, with bitter clarity, in this sacred place, scarred flesh had no pulpit. It had only pews in the shadows. She moved through the parking lot like smoke, hoping to disappear between the lines of sun-faded asphalt and windshields streaked with morning dust. But the air was too still, and voices carried. "She should be grateful she even made it back alive," said one. "It's a place of worship, not a war memorial," said another, softer, but not enough. "Why would she wear that jacket here?" Each phrase stuck like barbs under her skin, catching on years of carefully sutured silence. She didn't look back, didn't slow, but her hands trembled slightly as she guided her chair to her truck, a custom rig built for a life she never asked for. At home, the quiet didn't offer relief. It echoed. The light was dim through the blinds, dust motes drifting like the ash of old memories. She passed her service dog's empty bed, the folded flag in its display case, and the picture of her old unit, faces she couldn't name aloud anymore. The house was neat, precise, like the woman who had trained herself to survive in it. But nothing felt solid now, not even the floor under her wheels. She stopped in front of the mirror. Half her face stared back, smooth, poised, untouched. The other half told the truth. Puckered scar tissue ran from temple to cheek, faded but not forgettable. Her right eye sagged just slightly, rimmed with skin that had been grafted, burned, regrown. She unzipped the jacket with deliberate slowness. The scent of starch and metal rose up. As it slipped from her shoulders, she felt a chill, but not from the air. It was the exposure, the stripping away of armor. When she shoved it into the back of her closet, her metals fell with a dull, defeated clink against the hardwood. She didn't pick them up. Instead, she sat in the darkened room, the light from her phone casting long shadows across the floor. Her thumbs hovered over the screen, then moved. Today, I went to church hoping for grace. I left feeling like I brought shame. I served this country. I didn't expect applause, but I didn't expect to be humiliated either. No names, no fury, just the truth, clean and raw. She tapped post, set the phone down, and exhaled. No audience was expected, no reply required. But something had been torn loose, not from her face, from the part of her that had stopped hoping anyone would care. The sanctuary was quieter than usual that night, half-filled, dimmer, cloaked in the muted hush of routine midweek worship. The usual rhythm played out, familiar faces, worn hymnals, rustling programs. But in the very last pew, beneath a stained glass window washed in blue light, sat a man no one quite recognized. His posture was upright, military, his expression unreadable. His coat was dark, his hands still, but the stars on his lapel, 3 of them, precise and gleaming, caught the light like silent brass trumpets before a charge. Pastor Garrison stepped to the pulpit, Bible in hand, voice soft and pastoral. He spoke of humility, of grace, of the beauty of forgiveness and the importance of not clinging to bitterness. He quoted Proverbs, then Ephesians. His cadence was practiced, his tone gentle. But there was a tightness around his eyes, as if he was speaking not to a congregation, but to a memory still unresolved. And then, from the back of the room, came the sound of leather soles against old hardwood. The man stood, not abruptly, not theatrically, but like a soldier rising for a roll call he'd answered 1,000 times before. "I apologize for the interruption," he said. No mic. He didn't need one. His voice, though quiet, carried with the kind of weight that years in war rooms and command tents had forged into steel. "My name is Lieutenant General Harold Kane, retired, 39 years of service." Heads turned. Silence, dense and attentive, folded across the room. "I've buried men and women like Evelyn Carter," he continued, his gaze sweeping the pews. "And I'm here tonight because I saw something that shook me, not on a battlefield, but here, in this house, this sacred place." He stepped forward, each footfall deliberate. "She didn't post names, she didn't accuse, but I knew it was her. I remember her face, I remember her hands, how they looked when she pulled a corporal out of a minefield, holding his artery closed while they waited for medevac. She was covered in his blood. She never once let go." He paused, and the air felt thinner. "She wears that jacket not for vanity, not for attention, but because when the rest of the world walked past her scars, it was the one thing that told her she was still whole." He looked straight at Pastor Garrison then, not with hatred but with something heavier. "And if this is how you treat your heroes," he said, his voice quieting, "if humiliation greets sacrifice in God's house, then maybe we've all forgotten who this house is really for." A beat passed. Then one pair of hands began to clap. Another followed. And then the room stood. The sun was already high when Evelyn approached the chapel again, its rays catching the bronze on her chest and the burnished wheels of her chair. She moved without haste, but without hesitation. This time, she wasn't alone. On either side of the walkway stood a line of veterans, some in full dress uniform, others in battered jackets adorned with patches that spoke of jungles, deserts, and years never fully left behind. Some leaned on canes, others sat in silence, their prosthetic limbs gleaming like quiet declarations. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. They were her shield. As Evelyn neared the steps, townspeople began to gather. A woman clutched her husband's arm, tears welling. A teenage boy, cap pressed to his chest, offered her a nod. Strangers who'd never met her before stood as if they had been waiting all their lives to say thank you. Inside, the sanctuary had changed, not in structure, but in atmosphere. The same stained glass, the same pews, but something had cracked open since last week. Something prideful, something hard, and the light filtering through those windows didn't just color the room. It softened it. Pastor Garrison stood at the pulpit, eyes glassy, voice measured. "Before I speak, I want to say this plainly," he said. "What I said last Sunday was not of God. It was of fear, and ignorance, and pride. I judged what I didn't understand, and I let pride make me cruel." He stepped back. No defense, no justification, just surrender. But the service wasn't about him. It was about the woman who wheeled herself forward, medals pinned, jacket zipped to her collarbone like armor and gospel stitched in one. The room rose as one, the sound of standing bodies a chorus louder than any hymn. Not applause, just reverence. And it was about the dozen veterans who filled the front rows. Men and women who, for too long, had carried silence heavier than any rucksack, who now sat in pews where they were no longer invisible. Later that month, Evelyn stood once more inside Calvary Chapel, not as a guest, not as a symbol, but as the founder of its new veterans ministry. She laid down one condition. We don't pity, we don't fix, we listen, we see. The news cameras came. The story traveled. Blogs wrote of grace rediscovered and dignity restored. But Evelyn didn't show up for the headlines. She showed up because for the first time in years, when she looked around that church, she saw a sanctuary. And in every eye that met hers, she saw something even rarer than forgiveness. She saw honor.